go. Looks like we're live. Good morning. This is Jeff Dawson, Amazon best-selling author of Love's True Second Chance. Why Did Everything Happen? Gateway Pioche, Destination DC, Target Berlin, and the list goes on. There is a debate raging across the country on minimum wage. And I happen to get involved in one of those just recently, and this is the response that I came up with on it. And I'm sure I'll catch, because I usually do. I try and stay middle of the road, no matter what the issues are. And I just can't stand today's media. I don't care which channel it is. I mean, before I get into this minimum wage debate, why is Fox spending all their time on Cuomo? Let New York handle that. There's a couple of other bigger issues on the table right now, like HR 1. Why aren't they filling up their hours with everything that's in this bill? Which is DC becoming a state. But it's also in HR 1 if you didn't know. So I guess the Dems are doubling down. If one doesn't pass, maybe the other will. I don't know. But this is a really bad bill. As I've said in other videos, there are a couple of good things in it. And there's a lot of bad in it. And it's mainly bad. Very bad. Why aren't they talking about HR 127? This is the gun control bill. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. I did a video on that. Oh, hang on a second. No. Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm doing a video right now. I can call you back in about 10 minutes. Okay. That was my son-in-law. Luckily, he is in the energy industry, and none of these executive orders have affected him yet, so life is good. But there are so many more issues that any of these networks could be covering instead of their biased bullshit opinions on what they think is important. I don't care what you think is important. Why don't you try reporting the news? Why don't you try reporting the news instead of all of your opinions and all this divisiveness that you keep throwing out there for the right and the left? I mean, really, give me a break. And then all these damn memes you see on Facebook, it just makes me sick. I don't care which side of the aisle you are on. I'd probably delete half of the crap that comes across on Facebook today. I don't care if we have the same political views or not. If it's bullshit, and it needs to be dispensed with immediately. And it's not worth even commenting on. Just get rid of the crap. So here's the current debate on the minimum wage. For some reason, people are under the impression that $15 is the mecca number. For what? All right, let me get into this. The minimum wage was first set in 1938. This was during the horrible depression that our country had gone through from the 29 stock collapse. God, talk about a fiasco on that one. That was horrible. And my grandparents were part of it, along with my parents, because they grew up with nothing, but had to work to get something. So, was it ever supposed to be a living wage? 25 cents an hour was the minimum wage set in 1938 by FDR. What's that going to buy you? Is it going to buy you a room at the Ritz? I don't think so. The Grand Hotel, any of the Broadway plays? I don't think so. You're going to be able to live out in the country and have your outhouse for your parents and grandparents? I don't think so. It wasn't a living wage. My grandfather was one of those on the WPA cruise. It didn't pay much, but allowed he and his wife to survive and keep pushing for a better life. That's what it was about. It wasn't about this oh, well, you're going to be able to retire on 25 cents an hour. No, you're going to be able to eat. You might be able to find a place to sleep, but you weren't going to be able to buy all these extravagant, useless items that when people get into their golden years in their 60s, their 70s, their 80s, and they look around at everything they've accumulated, and they're like, now what the hell do I do with it? There's nothing wrong with accumulating stuff. But there comes a point where, okay, now what do I do with it? That's not what this was set up for. It was set up to where you could hopefully have some type of roof over your head. It might have leaked, and it wasn't well insulated, but at least you weren't out in the elements. You could eat at least once, maybe twice a day. My grandfather was a veteran of World War I. He was a nurse, and as I've been told the story, he never came back quite the same, which I can imagine because the medical procedures of World War I were the same as the Civil War. It was pretty horrific. But despite that, my grandfather kept pushing ahead and pushing ahead and pushing ahead to where he finally had 2 to 3 restaurants in Oklahoma. But because of his experience in World War I, he just couldn't stay with anything because he realized nothing is permanent. Nothing. Right or wrong, that's just the way my granddad was. But he kept pushing forward, not backwards, forward. So let's say we raise the minimum wage $15 for a remedial job, okay? So how does that affect a person? Well, let's do a comparison because the one guy I know lives in San Francisco and thinks it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Well, let's do a 1-bedroom comparison of Dallas, Texas to San Francisco. The average cost for that 1-bedroom apartment is $2,641. In SF. In Dallas, it's $1,256. So your gross is $2,400 a month. Your gross. And just throw in a 20 to 22% tax deduction, and you can do the math on that one. Guess you're going to be living in a car in San Francisco because you don't have enough money to pay the rent. Or you better get a whole bunch of roommates and decide to open the Sardine Inn because that's what it's going to take to afford just an apartment. Now in Dallas, you're looking a little better. You're going to have $1,385 left over once you make your rent payment. So how far is that going to go? Well, let's just throw out some numbers. Let's say you got a car payment, $300, insurance on the car, $125, utilities, $250, phone, $100. So that leaves you with $160. Oh, damn, I forgot about gas. You got to put gas in that car. And with the current prices, that ain't going to last very long. Now, if you have children, here's what you don't have money for. You don't have money for childcare or trips or entertainment, health insurance, life insurance, or investments. You don't have any money for that. This is at $15 an hour. So how is that the great savior that the median politicians, I mean, in San Francisco, just to be in comparison, their minimum wage would have to be $30 an hour. God knows what it'd be in New York. Okay. Now, I'm 61 years old. The minimum wage that I was paid when I first went to work for Wendy's at 16 was what, $205, $210 an hour. Yes, I lived with my parents. But when I got my any extra activities I wanted to do, taking dates to movies, going roller skating, going fishing, going to the movies, anything out of the ordinary, I had to earn that money. And when I got my truck, Yes, my dad bought it. It was $900 for a 1969 F100, the Mr. Majestic Ford. That's why I bought a Ford, was because of Mr. Majestic movie. Great machine. But the deal on the truck was people say, oh, your dad bought your truck. Yeah, he did. Because I was only making $205 an hour. What's that, $80 a week? Gross? So how long is it going to take to pay off that truck? 12 weeks? Yeah. But I got a construction job because I turned 18. Now I'm up to $8 an hour. So we made a deal. I have to pay that truck off in 3 months. And if I don't pay it off in 3 months, he's going to sell it. So don't think I didn't bust my ass and watch my pennies, make sure I could make that monthly payment. Now, he picked up the insurance, but all mechanical issues, fuel, that was all on me. And that was at $8 an hour. But back then, we didn't rely on the minimum wage to support us. We realized it's a starting point. That's all it is, a starting point. Okay? I want to do better. And the only way I'm going to do better is looking and learning a new trade. I got into construction on a concrete crew and learned how to set forms, check grade, pour concrete, finish concrete, tie steel. Anything that was involved, I had to learn that, and I didn't have a clue. But it worked out. But the big advantage of construction was the overtime. You don't see that in retail. Those guys in retail, you get to 40 hours and they're like, you're gone. There's no overtime in retail. In construction, we lived for the overtime. The hourly rate is your base. That takes care of hopefully the basics. You start getting that 10, 20, and sometimes 30 hours of overtime. That's where you started to be able to put money into the bank and start saving and start taking a trip here and there or springing for a really nice restaurant with your girlfriend. Without the overtime, man, you're just barely getting by. How many of you people in retail get overtime? I don't know anybody. And I know a lot of people in retail. Overtime, that's a cuss word. It's a big one. Because at $8 an hour, my gross was $320. You throw in 20 hours of overtime, it's $560 a week. In 1980, that was damn good money. No, 1978, that was damn good money. A week. I can do that. That's $8,000 a month. $8,000 for the season, for the 3 months. That's pretty damn good money in 1980. So, but I had to work for it. And it wasn't easy. You want to stand out in the sun all day in 100-degree weather and sweat to death? Yeah, for $8 an hour, I'll do it. I'm young, I'm dumb, but I'll do it. I'm paying my bills. So if you raise the minimum wage across the country, that will also include the Davis-Bacon Act. Now, what is the Davis-Bacon Act? Well, in construction, especially if we're doing a federal project, there's federal money involved. These are the minimum amounts you have to pay your employees. And they've got every category of worker in there. And if you don't pay that minimum wage and you get audited, yeah, get ready for the fines. I had that happen once. Luckily, the fine was little, but it was a city of Dallas job down around Fair Park. And, you know, I paid the fine. It's like, well, I screwed up. Well, those rates are going to go up because the minimum for a labor, if I'm not mistaken, is $8 an hour. That is an unskilled labor, is $8 an hour. You got a whole bunch of other categories above that. So all of this is going to skyrocket. You're basically doubling the pay of an unskilled worker at $15 an hour. Have you really thought about that? And along with that, we have to pay workers' comp. part of our insurance policy. Well, our worker comp rate, we do get a modifier, so you're going to pay more in premiums for that. Well, who is the contractor going to pass those costs to? Oh, that's right, when he bids a job. So if that happened today, what it's going to do is cities have bond projects. States and counties have set up budgets on repairs for roads or new construction. You double that rate, and a lot of those jobs are going to be put on hold because we just don't have the money. Because prices just increased 15 to 20% from all the contractors. And that's on existing bond programs and existing projects. Well, the new ones, guess what's going to happen? They're going to put out bond packages to voters who are going to vote on it. And then they're going to start letting those contracts out and realize we don't have enough money to do all this. So we're going to have to put out another bond project, and to raise revenue, we're going to have to raise taxes so that we have more money to do these. But this is not a good idea, because the dollar isn't going to go as far as it used to. And if you're in retail, if you're in the fast food industry, and this goes up to $15 an hour, look, I don't have a problem with that. But the ramifications are going to be brutal. You think the owners of these big corporations aren't going to figure out a way to cut employees out and replace them? Of course they will. We've seen it at Walmart. How many people over Christmas of 2020 hooted and hollered about don't go to Walmart because it's all self-checkout? And if you look at the Amazon video, like if you're applying for a job there, while it's pretty fascinating how their warehouses work and how computerized they are, how many jobs, even though Amazon is one of the biggest employers of the United States, I believe they're behind Walmart and the federal government, how many jobs did they eliminate with all their computerization robots, especially in the warehouses, moving stock around? That's a bunch of people. Now, granted, that initial investment Bezos had to make for those machines was probably off the wall, but based on the volume that he does, it's easily absorbed in a very short amount of time. So he comes out smelling like a rose. What about all the employees that could be working there but aren't because of the advances in technology and robotics? You will be replaced. Remember when some of the fast food companies tried to actually outsource the drive-in order speakers? What were they doing? Transfer them to India or something? And you couldn't understand a damn word they said? Yeah, that was a failed bit. They will find a way to replace you because the cost will go up, the profit margin, while they will still be making obscene profits when they report to their shareholders and show them the numbers, well, they're not going to be happy. Well, why did my dividend go down? And why isn't my stock price going through the roof? Ooh, because our costs went up. So you will be replaced. So doubling the minimum wage is not the answer. The largest increases since 1997 has been 70 cents an hour, and that has happened 3 times. Hasn't changed since 2009. So that's 12 years ago. Is it time for an increase? Well, yes. Is it time to double it? No. Because when sellers think customers have more money, don't think they won't raise their prices, especially in real estate and rental properties, like free agency and sports. They will test the market to assess the worth, and you know they will do it. In fact, when I worked at a company called J.A. Tobin, when I got out of college, I sat down with one of the engineers. He worked for Kidwell Construction. They built bridges. And we did a comparison of when he graduated college and when I got out of college. I didn't graduate. I don't make bones about it. I was 5 hours short because I couldn't pass engineering calculus 2. I hated that course. What you learn today is useless tomorrow, and the only time you'll see it is on the test. And I'm sorry. We looked at the cost of living, and I mean, we had like 10 categories. The one that really was out of line was housing. While everything else went up like 1.5 to 2 times, housing had gone up 400%. I remember Bud looked at me and goes, "What do you think about that?" And I said, "Well, that's a crock of shit." And he goes, "Yes, it is. But there's where your money is going." So why is housing and real estate just outpacing wages? Well, obviously it's for profits. But is the house that my parents bought in 1969 on a corner lot in Tulsa that sold, they bought it for like $30,000, was it really worth $150,000 in 2006? The same lot, same house, same city. Why all of a sudden is it worth $150,000? And I'm sure the economists can come up with a lot of examples, and that I don't want your examples. I want you to tell me why. Is it because you had to supply more city services? Well, that would seem logical. Had Tulsa grown that much more from 1969 to 1980? Yeah, it grew. There's no doubt about it. But those developers also had to pay impact fees to build that development. Where'd all that money go? I mean, that's a whole different ballgame for someone who's a hell of a lot smarter than me when it comes to economy. But the question remains, why is real estate and rentals so far ahead of salaries? Maybe that's what needs to be looked at. All right. Now so yes, it is time for an increase, but how much should that increase be? Well, the last 3 were 70 cents an hour. So now I could come up with a lot of examples on people that I know that started with nothing and, like myself, started at minimum wage and became very successful. I don't use his name, but this was my boss in one of my former jobs. He was married and working for Radio Shack. He started as a clerk. He moved his way up to a manager, and life was great. He was doing well. The company was doing good. And for those of us who are familiar with Radio Shack, we know what happened. They cratered. He lost his job. He lost his wife. He moved back in with his dad. He had no savings. He had no retirement. And he sat there for months on his dad's front porch looking at this construction company across the street. And he finally decided that he needed to suck up his pride and get a job. He walked across the street and asked them if he could do anything. This guy was a manager for a Radio Shack store. You know what job they gave him? They gave him a broom and said, sweep up the parking lot and in front of the storefront at minimum wage. Man, that's kicking the ass, but I could relate to that because when I lost, a buddy of mine knew I was in dire straits, and he offered me $20 a night to clean his restaurant. Well, yeah, I sucked up my pride. I pulled my head out, and $100 a week didn't go very far, but it's what we had to do. So he does this, and he stays there. And slowly but surely, they give him a little more responsibility. They occasionally give a raise, which they weren't known for being generous with raises, until one day he was out on a job site because they were shorthanded, and they were working on a message board. The big ones you see on the highway that tell you there's a wreck up ahead and they're like 5 miles. He got a promotion right there because nobody else knew how to work on them. They didn't have a clue about the software inside those signs. It's not real complicated, but you do have to have a basic understanding on how the wiring works to make that thing say, hey, dumbass, there's a wreck up ahead. And from that point on, he pushed himself to learn more, to learn all this on the job and rely on the people that have been there and been doing it, how they do this work. Where do the columns come from? How are they designed? Who manufactures them? What's the process of getting them approved through the state? I mean, it's really mind-boggling if you've never been around this type of work. He learned all this to the point he is still now. Does he live the life of leisure? No, he has a modest house. He has a great wife. He has kids. He has grandkids, and he's as happy as a clam. But he never settled. And sadly, that is what I see in the media. Well, if you get $15 an hour, you can settle. Oh, the hell you can. Settle for what? Mediocrity? Is that the direction the media and politicians, and look up what some of these folks in the media are making. It'll floor you. Like Sean Hannity makes $10 million a year. That's about 9 too much. But any of them, any of these people, pull up their, you can do it. I've done it. Pull up what they're making a year. It'll flabber. I didn't mean to get off track, but God, I can't stand the media. Okay. He started on the back end of a broom in his 30s, his mid 30s. How many of you would do that if you woke up one day and your company was gone? Your employer shut the doors. What are you going to do? You're going to have to backtrack. You're going to have to regroup. Many of us have done this, and it ain't fun. Sometimes that's what we have to do. You know, Mike Rowe has the right idea. You want to make more money? Then go out, learn a trade, and continue to improve yourself. And that is the biggest thing right there. You have to want to improve yourself. Why is it the government's responsibility to improve you? It isn't. It's yours. It's a personal responsibility. How much do you think of your self-worth? What do you want to accomplish in life? Do you want to stay at $15 and you don't have enough damn money to afford an apartment? So I guess you're going to live in your car. Like, I forgot his, Jim, who has the Mad Money show. He talks about that. Or that movie with Will Smith, where I forgot who he portrayed, but he'd gone through a divorce. He invested in a product that failed miserably, had a son. He's living on the streets. He finally is allowed to take an entrance exam at a stockbroker. He wouldn't settle. That's the whole point. These people don't settle. They went through some very difficult and hard times, but they refuse to settle. So why is the government and the media telling us that $15 is the end, is the pot at the end of the rainbow? It's not. You keep hammering them to do anymore. There will always be a select group that don't want to do better, that don't want to move forward. That's a choice. That's theirs. But for the rest of us, that is not an acceptable choice. But if you listen to them, you'll be able to afford a 2,000 square foot home with a 2-car garage and probably 2 Mercedes parked out front. The hell you say? Well, that's bullshit. That ain't going to happen. This is about personal responsibility. And if you do increase this to $15 an hour, get ready for lost jobs and inflation. That's just what we need. You know, there was good news today that came out of the Hill where there was 379,000 people came back into the workforce, putting the unemployment number at 10 million. But then I didn't believe the unemployment numbers back in 08, 09 during the, no, it wasn't 08, 09. Yeah, it was. When we had the derivative collapse It was actually around 25 million, but the press kept reporting 15 because that's all they know. They don't know how to do research. It'd scare the hell out of them if they actually did something and figured it out. God, I hate when I get off point and I forget what I was talking about, but it was good. Yet of the 379,000 jobs, you know where most of them came from? Leisure and entertainment. Well, they've been shut down for a year, so of course and this is from states that are opening up. Yet you see all this flack about states opening up from the left, and it just blows my mind because I live in Texas, so everyone is bitching and moaning about Abbott lifting the mask mandate. It's still a choice. I have friends that have said they're still going to wear theirs for 2 or 3 months. That's a choice. He is leaving it up to the businesses. The numbers will weigh out, and I track them every week. And you go to LDDJenterprises.com, and I will post those, and you can see how this has been tracking. It has been going down. Last week we did have a spike. We'll see what this week comes out to in the following weeks. But so the states that are opening and letting companies rehire people, or it should go up. It is a good thing. Yet how can you be excited about that and still bitching about the states opening? Well, you can't have it both ways. I know you want to make Biden look good. Fine, I understand that. But the only way that's happening is because states are opening up. So do you want them to stay closed so people don't go back to work and just keep drawing unemployment? You know, what the hell do you want? I don't know. You can't have it both ways. It's just that damn simple. You think you'll hear that from the media? I don't give a damn who it is. Of course you won't. Fox, CNN, MSNBC, NPR, ABC, CBS, NBC. You think you'll hear that from any of them? Hell no, because it doesn't fit their BS narrative. And that's all it has become anymore, is just a ridiculous, useless narrative. And they want to listen to themselves talk. $15 an hour bonanza, this do all to save all and resolve all the problems. If you want lost jobs and high inflation, sign up, get with your representatives and tell them that's what you want. But if you don't want that, then let's see it go up 75 cents an hour, because that isn't going to just throw the economy into turmoil. And those are my thoughts on the $15 minimum wage. Y'all have a good day.